Well, 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 Montreal. Happy Halloween to all of y'all who celebrated the event yesterday. I personally had a very fun night out. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but because of my plans on Halloween night, I was not able to watch the Montreal Canadiens playoff against the Washington Capitals. However, I was paying attention to it because, of course, I've got the notifications on my phone. I have the video footage accessible to me via social media, and everybody was tweeting out a lot of the highlight reel moments. People were talking about Cole Caulfield, people were talking about some of the other offense that came out, but at the end of the day, the Montreal Canadiens ended up losing to the Washington Capitals 6-3. Now, that doesn't sound like the worst game in the world. Okay, I feel like 6-3 games happen pretty frequently in the NHL. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But 6-3 is what you get when you look at just the numbers. When you dive into some of the intricate stats, things get even worse. Because if you go over to the Canadiens, you'll figure out that they had themselves only 16 shots in yesterday's game. That doesn't sound great, and then it gets even worse when you acknowledge that the Montreal Canadiens were 1 for 6 on the man advantage. They had 6 power plays in this game, and only 16 total shots. What the hell happened here for the Montreal Canadiens? In fact, it gets even worse. Because if you go over to moneypuck.com, you take a look at the deserve to win-o-meter, I have never, ever, in my years of watching hockey and my years of paying attention to Money Puck, I have never seen a game this lopsided. Because the Montreal Canadiens had a 6.5% chance of winning this game. The Washington Capitals had a 93.6% chance. What the hell? How do you even get it that bad? If you scroll down and you look at the expected goal chart, you take a look at the scoring chances, Montreal had some offense in the second period and a little bit at the very beginning of the game, but Washington just kind of outclassed Montreal the entire way through. Montreal had 1.34 expected goals, Washington had 5.46. You know, you can take a look at this game. You can go on paper and say, oh wow, look at that, Cayden Primo totally crapped the bed for Montreal. 824 save percentage, he let in 6 goals on 34 shots against. And while it's true that I think Cayden Primo is a player who needs to show off more for the Montreal Canadiens, at the same time, it's like the Caps had so many high-quality chances, and just based off of some of the advanced stats, it doesn't look like Montreal deserved to win this game at all. In fact, if you're following the timeline of this game, Montreal actually clawed back. They were down 1-0, and then they scored 2 to get the 2-1 lead. Washington then scored 2 more to go up 3-2, and then Nick Suzuki tied things up late in the second. But in the third period, the Montreal Canadiens just let the game get away from them, allowing 3 straight Washington Capitals goals, and Marty St. Louis even went out there and said this, our start showed that, we were patient and we were disciplined in that department. Like I said, we were in a good spot going into the third period, but you just throw up all over yourself. And look, it's been like 4 minutes in this video, 3.5, 4 minutes. I don't want to spend the entire time talking about the Capitals game. Instead, I wanted to just dive into the overarching narrative about the Montreal Canadiens in 2024-2025. Because obviously, with a game like that against the Caps, where they stunk up the entire room and left right away, it doesn't bode well for any Canadiens fan that's hoping for a playoff berth in 2024-2025. It doesn't bode well for Canadiens fans who are hoping any sort of a deeper, meaningful run of success this season too. I mean, look, the Canadiens can, technically, make themselves the playoffs because take a look at the wild card. They are literally just 2 points out of the wild card right now. But they are in a huge tie with a whole bunch of other teams for that 2 points out spot, and the worst team in the East, the Islanders, only have 1 fewer point than Montreal. It's kind of ridiculous just how close everything is in the Atlantic Division here, but when Montreal suits up and you see this team play, with Cayden or without, when you see the goaltending have themselves the nights that they have had. Sammy Montembeault has a really great shutout to start out the year, but then over the next few weeks, he posts up some terrible games with the occasional stellar victory sprinkled in between there once in a while. There is just no consistency. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you were expecting the Canadiens to be the most consistent and the most competitive and always bringing their A game and being the best versions of themselves, I hate to tell you this, but Cole Caulfield was drafted just 5 years ago. He made his debut with the team just 3 years ago. Juraj Slafkovsky was just drafted 2 years ago, and he's been on the team a lesser amount due to his injury in the first season. A lot of these guys in the Montreal Canadiens are not at their peaks. And the window of opportunity, what the team is going through, what they went through after making the Stanley Cup Finals and then drafting first overall, you don't bounce back out of that for a few years. Nathan MacKinnon and the Colorado Avalanche, for example, guess what? The Avs drafted first overall in 2013. It wasn't until 2018 that the Avalanche actually started to put together meaningful results. And the reason I say that is because in 2017, 4 years after Nate "MacDaddy" MacKinnon was drafted first overall, they finished last in the league. Even with MacKinnon. They had some other guys too. Matt Duchene was in the mix. You had the Johnsons and the Gabe Landeskog's, and then other players like, I don't know, who else was on that squad? Semyon Varlamov? Blake Como? Tyson Barrie? This team sucked. And that was 4 years after Nathan MacKinnon was drafted first overall. They still finished last. They didn't draft first overall in 2017. They actually slipped in the draft to number 4, but they ended up taking Cale Makar, and then they won the Stanley Cup 5 years later. It took them 9 years to win the Stanley Cup and have themselves a competitive team after Nathan MacKinnon was drafted first overall. We're sort of seeing this idea with hockey fans and hockey media that, oh yeah, you know, the team can't just exist being bad. And I get it. The Canadiens did exist being bad for a few years after their Stanley Cup final run. It's why they ended up getting first overall. And it's true that while some of these guys have been drafted and developed and they're on the team now, it's true that you could say you want more out of them, but that's just it. If you look at some of the point production, you might actually argue that you're getting the best out of these guys. Cole Caulfield is literally tied for first in the NHL in goals. He's got 10 goals in the first 11 games of the year, 1 assist though, so he's on pace for 75 goals and 7 assists. Kind of funny how that works out. But some of these other guys in the Habs have been producing, but it's mostly due to circumstance. I mean, Cole Caulfield is at 11 points, Nick Suzuki is at 13 points, Matheson's at 9, Slafkovsky is under a point per game, Hudson has 7 points in 11 games. These guys are producing, but can you say they're bringing their A games every night? Not consistently. And that's okay, because the rest of the lineup isn't capable of matching that intensity nor that output. Dvorak, Armia, these guys haven't been great lately. Everybody's talking all this smack about the defense. There's so much going wrong with the Montreal Canadiens that a game like yesterday's, where you saw the team completely collapse in the third and get outchanced the entire way through, where they only had a 6% chance to win, when you look at the blowout loss against the Seattle Kraken, where Sammy Montembeault crapped the bed, Kraken crapped the bed. Yeah, it's kind of tough to say that, but still, when you look at these games, I don't think anybody should be surprised. Like, sure, pull your hair out and scream in frustration. Okay, probably just don't do that. It's not really good for your health, but like, you can be frustrated. You're allowed to feel upset. You can feel that the team is not giving it their best, but I don't know anybody who was going out there and saying that they could give it their best. I know some people like me, for example, we're talking about like point production and guys could go out there and have X amount of points in their seasons, but realistically, that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, it's difficult to articulate the difference between actually getting tangible, on paper, goal, assist, point results, and actually being able to carry a team to winning games. The Habs are just not a good, well-oiled team. They're just a team that can go out there and score some points with their top guys getting all the points. It's kind of funny how that works because it pretty much articulates that the rest of the team is bad. And I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that assessment. The Habs are a bad team, but who expected them to be any better? At this point, I mean, it's been an 8th into the season already. I don't know anybody who's looking at these games and being pissed off saying, man, I thought Christian Dvorak could have had a much better game. Really? You think he could have? I don't know, man. I don't know. So maybe this video exists just to say, temper expectations. This is fine. They're still rebuilding. It's going to take a long time. Everything is going to be fine, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.